Okay, hello security pros. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, Remote Surveillance Management and Tips for Reducing Costs. Whether it's a single office or multiple warehouses, businesses need to monitor their assets, and things like smart notifications can be invaluable. But if not set up properly, an overload of irrelevant alerts can make it difficult to recognize a legitimate security event. Also, due to many state safe orders, many businesses need to manage surveillance deployments remotely. In this webinar, we're joined by Synology experts who will share best practices and go through live demos using Synology's all-in-one platform, Surveillance Station. We'll also learn how to manage a single site or set up multi-site management all from one location today. Today on the webinar, you can expect these takeaways: setting up smart notifications and fine-tuning alerts, optimizing storage and bandwidth to reduce costs, smart search to locate missed events, centralized management for multi-site projects, and considerations for hardware selection. I'm Jillian Bateman, ESA's Chief Development Officer, and I'll be facilitating our discussion today. Before we dive in with our experts, I have a few tips for those joining us on your very first ESA webinar. All callers will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Click the Q&A button at the bottom of your control panel to pose a question at any time. There's no need to save those questions until the end of today's presentation. If something pops up, go ahead and ask it, and we'll ensure we have some time with our Synology experts today. We'll also be recording today's webinar, so you can watch the on-demand video at your leisure and share it with your colleagues. Just give us until tomorrow to get the video hosted on the ESA website. Don't worry, we'll send you an email that thanks you for attending today with a link to that recording tomorrow. We at ESA realize your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Chris Alden. Chris is a senior sales manager at Synology. Every day, he works with end users and dealers, and this direct connection allows him to help them identify their problems and come up with customized solutions to fit the client's needs. His work at Synology has him closely involved with many industries, ranging from entertainment, governmental, healthcare, and more. He's originally from Maine, but currently lives in Seattle, Washington. Chris, I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you. Super thorough introduction. Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. And as mentioned, really want to focus on remote surveillance management here. There's a lot that goes into it, but we have a ton of tips for kind of reducing the cost and the effort that falls onto you. So today I'm going to cover a fair bit of ground, and I'm really going to dive into three main topics here. First, we'll discuss how we can monitor our surveillance deployments regardless of if we're near them or not. Next, we'll talk about best practices in managing multiple different deployment locations and teams. And lastly, we'll be discussing how to set up smart event detection and alerts to minimize the work that's going to fall on your shoulders. So this all stems from a question that we've all been surprised with this year, I'm sure. How can we remotely manage and monitor our sites during a pandemic? I wasn't really expecting this one, but this is kind of what the whole year is centered on, hasn't it? Now, before I really dive into that, I want to introduce you to Synology in case you're unfamiliar. Our hardware offerings are massively scalable. So they're covering the gamut from a terabyte to well over a petabyte of data in a single deployment. We have tons of different performance options that will cover the size of your deployment as necessary, and all of our business class units are scalable as well. So if you do start with a small deployment that grows exponentially over the coming years, you can count on your Synology hardware to do the same. Now, all of our hardware is powered by our operating system, Disk Station Manager, or DSM for short. This is a web-based OS that's accessible through any browser on desktop or mobile devices, and has a large app store with well over 100 first and third-party applications that can tailor your device to fit your specific needs. Now, best of all, this is completely license-free and it's available on all Synology devices. And one of these license-free pieces of software is Surveillance Station. Now, this is what we're going to be focused on today. Surveillance Station is our all-in-one management platform for your security deployment with Synology. All of your camera's settings and recordings are going to be accessible through this software. So here's how it works. You have your cameras installed and set in place throughout your buildings, and they're all connected to your network. Now, by connecting a Synology NAS or NVR to that network, it will automatically find all of those connected cameras. Then, by connecting a computer or a mobile device to that same network, we can access, manage, and watch in real time our entire security deployment. Live View is a single pane of glass interface that allows you to monitor up to 100 feeds at the same time. Now, this works on desktop or mobile devices straight through the browser or through a standalone application. And with the correct credentials, you can remotely access your entire deployment from anywhere without complicated port forwarding or VPN settings. And that's the piece I actually want to show you here right now. I want to enable that remote management so we can access our NAS device from anywhere in the world. So I'm going to exit out of this real briefly here. And here you'll see DSM. Now, I'm accessing this simply through my web browser. And if you're familiar with Linux, Mac, or Windows, this should feel right at home to you. Here's your desktop. You have your applications here on the left. And again, what we want to do is enable that remote management. We want to be able to access this device from anywhere. So in order to do that, I'm going to go here to the left-hand side and click on Control Panel. Now here's where I can change all of my different system preferences, but what I want to do is go to the second category and go to Connectivity. Now real quick, I'll show you the external access settings here. So we can set up DDNS, router configurations, and all sorts of advanced settings such as static IPs, exactly what the web address is going to be. But some businesses may not have the time or the capability to set up all of these things. So we really wanted to make it easy for everybody. And in that case, we created Quick Connect. Now here on the left-hand side, we'll click on Quick Connect. And here it just greets us with kind of the general overview. This basically will enable us a web address for our specific unit that if we know it, we can go to it and enter our credentials and log directly in. And to set this up, it's super easy. If you already have a Synology account that you'll create when you buy a Synology unit, we'll click Enable Quick Connect. We'll agree to the terms of service, and then we'll hit Apply. Now, this Quick Connect ID is simply the name of my unit. You may have to change this based on availability, but right here, Synology demo unit was not taken. So DSM quickconnect.to/Synology demo unit. What happens if I click this is it goes directly to the unit in question. So I'll be able to log in directly right here, which means I can give that web address to people, and if they have the login credentials, they have a user account on my NAS, they can access whatever I dictate there. So that's a really quick way to kind of get up set up for that remote management and being able to access your NAS remotely. So I'm going to back out here and jump back into these slides. So now that we can remotely access our device, we're going to want to take a look at Surveillance Station, and we're going to set ourselves up for success with some best practices regarding monitoring and alerts. First, we want to set up proper event detection. Now, I want to make sure any important events are being detected and that I'm being notified of those things right away, no matter where I am. I also want to make sure that I'm optimizing my bandwidth. Now, this is to reduce our network strain for larger deployments, but also to reduce how much data storage we're taking up on the device. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that right now. So I'm actually going to open up Surveillance Station, the client here installed on my computer. But again, I could access this through the browser as well. So looks super familiar. The only difference is all of the applications installed on Surveillance Station are surveillance centric. So they're all focused on that. Now what I'm going to do first here is click on IP camera on the left. Now this is where I can add or connect to any of my cameras. You can see that I currently have one camera here. You can see my front yard. It's a bit rainy. Can control my camera. Perfect. So we know that this works. This is connected and it's on my network. But we want to set up a few different rules for it. Again, we want to set up alerts and we want to make sure that it's not using too much bandwidth. So I'm going to exit out here. And what I'm going to do is click on the camera that I want to edit, or group of cameras if that was applicable, and click edit here at the top. Now we have a ton of different settings we can go through, but again, the first thing I want to do is kind of optimize that bandwidth. So under the device settings here on the left, I'm going to click on video. Now here we can change what our video format, audio format is, all of that thing. But what we want to do is change the bandwidth under the streaming profiles here. So we can see that we have one streaming profile, simply called Stream 1. Now the resolution here, let's say we actually want to bump this up to 1080 frame rate. Let's make this a pretty high quality stream. So 20 frames a second at 1080. That's great. That'll be our high quality stream here. But what we want to do is also create a low bandwidth stream. So under the low bandwidth, simply click Stream 2. Now this will automatically populate with some low resolution settings here, 640 by 480, 10 frames a second. This looks good. So now we have two different streaming qualities here, and we want to dictate how we can switch between the two. So I'll click Save, and then the next thing we want to do is go to the recording settings. So on the left-hand side, I'll click Recording Settings. We have a ton of different options here as well. So the first one I want to go to is the Schedule. Now, right here, we can see that this is continuously recording 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we actually want to keep that. That's pretty great. But we can customize different rules or set it to just motion detection recording. We can set that to specific hours across the entire day or entire week. Right now, again, I'm just going to set this continuous all the time. What I want to do though is go to the stream setting here at the top. And we can see that this is all set to balanced currently. So that continuous recording, maybe I don't need this to be a balance between our high profile and our low profile stream. So under continuous, I'll click low bandwidth. Now this means that this is going to be continuously recording at that 640 by 480 setting that we set up. And what we'll want to do is dictate when it's going to switch to the higher quality streaming setting. So under advanced continuous recording settings, what we can do is click event detection. Now this means all detections, or we can change it to just motion or tampering detections. I'll keep it at all for now. Will automatically switch profile. We can say that's going to switch to high quality. We can also change how long that's going to switch as well. So right now it's set to 10 seconds. We can go to 30 or kind of any of the options there, but we'll say for 10 seconds, if it detects any sort of event, it's going to automatically switch over to 1080 to make sure that we're capturing as much detail of this as possible. So I'll save this here, and then now we want to kind of dictate what an event detection actually is. So on the left-hand side, I'm sure you can guess, we'll click event detection. Now here we have a few different detection algorithm sources. Now, if you bought a camera that has some really great event detection settings built in, maybe that's why you bought it, you can keep all of those settings here, simply buy camera, and it'll override with those settings. But if you have a camera that maybe doesn't have the best settings, or it doesn't have any event detection settings at all, what we'll want to do is change the detection algorithm source to surveillance station. Now the sensitivity and the threshold dictate how much movement is needed for an event detection to be captured. This is completely up to you and your deployment. If I have a lot of moving branches and stuff, I may want to lower that sensitivity a bit. But another cool thing I can do is actually edit the detection area. So I'll click that underneath here, and we can see this is basically highlighting the entire frame. But what I can do is maybe I'm not interested in these bushes or kind of what's going on over here, but I am interested if somebody's coming up my walkway here. So what I can do is highlight simply my walkway area. And now I'm going to get an event detection whenever somebody passes through this square. So I'll know if somebody's walking up to deliver mail or really anything of that nature. I should be notified of that. That will trigger an event detection. So now to actually set up how we're being notified of this event detection, I'm going to back out of all of this here. And we're going to go here, the bottom left-hand side, notification. And when I open this up, we're greeted with quite a few different options. We can make sure that we're getting email notifications, text messages, push services to our workstations. But what I kind of want to show you is the rules and all of the settings here. So again, we can set up a schedule. Maybe we're not going to be notified in the middle of the night, but here's all of the different things that we can be notified about. So if the connection to my camera is lost, maybe my dog accidentally stepped on the cable and that's gone, maybe I want to be notified via email about that. I'll get an email with the subject header, camera connection lost, and I'll know exactly what's going on. For motion detections, maybe I'm leaving on vacation and I kind of want to know if somebody's lurking around my front yard. I can click SMS and make sure that I'm getting a text message of that event as it occurs. We have tons of different options here. Another really cool one is actually under the advanced tab here. So if I click on this, it's called Event Snapshot. So what's great about this is I can take a snapshot when an event is detected, and then I can make sure that I'm getting an email with basically a picture of that event occurring. So I can tell if this is a false positive straight away or not, or if there really is someone right at the door and I'm able to see that directly as soon as I open up my email. So this is just a really quick way to make sure that you're being alerted and you're able to visually see what's going on with your deployment there. So really that's it as far as kind of getting set up with optimizing alerts and bandwidth. It's pretty simple to do. And again, all those settings I showed on the singular camera can be applied to groups of cameras as well. So for the case that we do miss events or when we need to find when something specific had occurred, we have Smart Search. Now, Smart Search allows you to specify what kind of event you're looking for, such as motion detections, and scrub through all of your recorded footage from any particular time to find that event. Simply select the camera and area that you're searching, and our software will do the rest. So again, let's take a brief look at this and how this works. So back in Surveillance Station, we can see on the desktop, I don't have any functionality called Smart Search. So what I want to do is go to the upper left-hand side and click on the main menu. Here we can see all of the different surveillance software that's currently installed on our device. And at the bottom, we have Smart Search. Now, what's great about this is just pulling up my last 24 hours. We can see that the date is from the 13th, that's today. And what I want to do is just kind of scroll forward a bit. Well, let's go to this morning around 7:57 a.m. That sounds great. So let's say that I'm looking for a particular thing. I'm curious when the garbage people came by and if they grabbed my garbage yet. Now, I'm notoriously lazy, so I could walk outside and check that myself, but I'm going to check that out with my cameras here. So one way we can do that is by going to the Configure tab and saying motion detection. You can already see that's here, but I can also dictate missing object, foreign object, camera occlusion, no idle zone, which is great. If I want to highlight a part on the street, I can make sure that nobody's kind of hanging out there a little bit too long. Missing object is also fantastic. If there's something in the frame of my camera and it goes missing, I can click on missing object and it'll find exactly when it left the frame. But here I'll just click on motion detection. Again, we can change the sensitivity settings depending on what we need. I'll keep it at a medium. And the detection area will help us isolate so we're not grabbing birds or planes flying by or a cat crossing the yard or anything. I'm really just kind of curious about this area here where my garbage bins are. So what I'll do is now that that's highlighted, I'll click play. So this is going to scrub through my footage, and if anything happens there, it's kind of going to highlight those areas. So we can see it's bringing up a few things. Looks like this tree is kind of triggering a bit of it, but there was also a few cars and things of that nature. So all of the results will populate on the right-hand side, and I can simply click on any of these and it'll pull up about 20 seconds where that event occurred. So I can see here, it captured a car that drove by. Now, if this was of some sort of significant importance to me, I could click this icon here, which will download this video clip and just this clip directly to either my workstation or to my NAS device in case I needed to send this to the authorities or just have a local copy on hand. We can also right-click on any of this particular footage and click lock, which will make sure that this isn't overwritten after a month or however long my retention settings are. We'll always have a copy of this particular video. So again, that's pretty much how easy it is to get started with Smart Search and find anything you could be looking for without having to manually scrub through all of your different footage. Now, let's shift gears here for a moment and look at another question that we've been getting a lot of lately. How can we manage cameras at different locations with a singular IT team? Now, here's the issue. This client has 3 offices located in Seattle, Everett, and Tacoma. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the area, Everett and Tacoma are about 45 minutes away from Seattle in opposite directions. Now, that makes for a lot of time just spent traveling between sites in an average business day. And as we're all familiar with this year, there could also be travel restrictions preventing us from physically visiting all of our other office locations, especially if they're other states or in other countries. What I'm getting at here is the traditional way of doing these things may not always be feasible. We have a solution to this problem, CMS, or Central Management System. Now, CMS allows you to manage up to 300 Synology NAS devices and up to 5,000 cameras from one centralized location, making it easy to monitor and fully manage every piece of hardware across your entire deployment, no matter where in the world everything is located. So real quickly, I'm going to show you kind of the overview of CMS and how it works. So for this, we're actually going to go back into our browser. We're going to exit out of here. And we're back in DSM, not the surveillance station, but just main DSM here. So what I want to do is just set up that CMS. And again, this is available for free download on our package center. I'll go up to the top left-hand side, the main menu, and I'll find our central management system. And when I open this up, we're greeted with an overview tab. Now, if we had multiple servers connected here, we could see all of them. We could see all of the drives throughout our employment. If any of these devices needed software or operating system updates. But in order to get started with the management, we'll go to the left-hand side and click on Server. So here I can click Add and Add Server. Now, if I was installing and doing a rollout of a bunch of new servers, we could add new servers and install DSM remotely onto them. But this server that I have in mind already has DSM. So we can upload a server list if we have one. We can add a single server according to its IP address or even that quick connect ID we set up earlier. Or we can just look for ones on the local area network. Now that's what I'm going to do here, and this should pull up my DS918 Plus. Now this is a unit that I used to store a lot of data on, and look, perfect, pulled up my serial as well. So what I can do is log in as my admin account here. If I remember the password, and we'll click next. And perfect, we'll apply that. Now, this is added to our CMS chain. So the device I'm currently utilizing can manage this other device. Now, what's cool is if we go back to the overview tab, we can see that one server is online and it's going to be currently pulling up all of the hard drive volume and update information. So it's currently updating that data, but while it does that, we'll take a look at a few of the other things that it can do. We can set up a variety of notifications. We can set up logs for any of these devices as well. And what's pretty great is the groups and policies. So again, if we have a really large deployment with hundreds of different Synology devices, maybe we don't want them all under the same server hierarchy. We can create different server groups. Maybe particular offices or states or branches will have their own servers. We can also create policies. So if I click Create Policy, we have a ton of different options here. I can name the policy, but what I want to do first is actually see what we can change here. So on the left-hand side, we can see we have quite a few different options depending on what we need. one thing I always like to set up when I'm managing groups of hardware like this is kind of set up auto block functionalities. So here we can just add auto blocks. This just means if people are trying to log into the unit and maybe access our surveillance system, we can block that IP after a few failed attempts. This is really good for DDoS attacks and things of that nature. All we'd have to do is enable this rule, click OK, and again, I'd have to finish setting this up, but that would enable that policy, and then that would affect whichever group that I want to put that in. And this is still taking a bit of time to update, so we'll move forward, but this is how CMS works to get started with actually connecting to those devices. But now if I jump into Surveillance Station here, we have CMS in here as well. So I'll click on the main menu and click CMS. Now here we're currently unpaired since I just connected that device, but we have a ton of different options. So under the advanced setting, we can set this up as a host server, which will simply host all of the functionality for these videos. We can set it up as a recording server that all of our recordings are going to be saved over there. Or another great choice here is the failover server mode. So in case, site A goes down, we can automatically switch over the functionality to site B if it's set up for that. And that way we're really maintaining as much uptime as possible. So this can all be dictated through the CMS functionality. Now, all of our software works with extensive user permissions controls. You can easily dictate which individual users or groups of users have permission to utilize any of the functionality on your devices. Now, if your local teams need to be able to access live view for simple monitoring, but you don't want them to be able to change camera settings, direction, or edit or delete the captured footage, that can all be set up here. There are, of course, some best practices to keep in mind here as well. You want to give your IT management team the ability to fully operate and manage any of their authorized devices. But again, you really want to make sure that other staff can only do exactly what they need to do with the device. Perhaps view the footage or use it as a file server, but not be able to edit a lot of these things or delete any settings or important data. So again, we'll jump right back in here for our last demo, and I'll show you how easy it is to configure user permissions. So I'm going to go back into the browser, back into DSM, and the first thing we'll want to do is open up this control panel again. So here under file sharing, we have user and group. Now, if I click on user here, we can see that I have a few users. I have an IT administrator and I have 3 employees here. Now, what's cool is I can go in and edit any of the functionality on a particular user simply by clicking on them and clicking edit. I can change exactly what they have permission to. The IT administrator has permission to every single thing on this device. They don't have a single quota, but you can set it up so individual users have a quota of how much data they can utilize on the device as well, and access to all of the applications for the IT admin. Now, instead of going ahead and making sure that we're editing every employee one by one, which is especially not feasible if we have hundreds of employees, what I can do is click on group on the left-hand side, and I can create a new group. So we'll change group name to employees here and click next. Now, here we want to dictate exactly what shared folders they can access. Now, maybe I want them to be able to read the surveillance data, but I don't want them to really be able to write any new data or make changes there. And I want them to be able to read their own home here as well. So we'll select that, and we'll give no access to our backup data or to our important data folder here. I'll click next, and we can enable quotas here again, but I'm not too worried about it right now. I'll click next. And then we can make sure that we're giving them specific application permissions. So again, maybe I do want them to be able to access Surveillance Station, but they just can't write any changes to it. I'll click next. And then here we can change our upload limit, download limit speeds, not applicable in this scenario. Press next, and I'll press apply. So when I create this group, the next thing I want to do is add all of my members to it. So here where it says employees, I'll click on that group and click edit members. And here when I click add, I can add basically all of these guys, click OK. And now all of the rules for that group apply to all of these employees. They can only read the data on the surveillance station, they can see it, but they can't actually make any changes. I'll click finish, and there we go. It was really that easy to get that kind of situated. And it gets a lot more granular than that as well if you have particular functionality within the applications that you want them to be able to do. But as a general overview, that's how you can get started. So that's basically a preliminary look at a lot of our software. And next I want to get into some case studies that we've recently done with a lot of different customers. Now, for certain end user protections, we've agreed to withdraw the names for our presentations here, but the first one that I want to discuss is a healthcare provider. Now, this group operates a hospital that had previously installed over 100 cameras in several DVRs. The problem they were having was the DVRs were consistently missing footage and overall deemed to be unreliable. Now, if you've worked in healthcare, you know you really can't have that. So they needed to find a reliable solution, and very quickly. They decided to work with Synology. And our units were a great fit because we already worked with all of the cameras that they had previously installed. They put a few of our units in to control nearly 120 cameras and 22 door controllers. They were able to set it up to fail over to a Synology device that they had already installed to back up their virtual machines. Now, with this solution, they were able to get rid of their licensing fees, their previous costly DVRs, and they were able to maximize their uptime with failover devices and local redundancy. This next one is a retail chain that operates throughout the southeastern United States. Now, they operate well over 100 stores, each with a local recording server hosting about 12 cameras, each in a similar configuration rolled out across the board. And what had happened is several of their stores had unfortunately fallen victim to a hurricane. Now, after the storm had passed, their IT team at their headquarters was able to remotely log into the stores and check on all of the devices. They were also able to see through the cameras and determine what damage had been done to each of the individual stores and what would need to happen when people were able to return to the sites safely. Now, this was made possible in part by our automatic power on after power failure feature, which will make sure that your devices automatically reboot in case of a power loss. Now, the last one here is pretty interesting. I love talking about this one, and it showcases some out-of-the-box ingenuity when it comes to surveillance deployments. This university has a school of dentistry, and they wanted an easy way to monitor their students' dental performances. They opted to utilize us, and they installed over 100 cameras throughout their school in an interesting setup. They put cameras in the maneuverable lights over the dentist chairs so that the professors could easily monitor in real time their students' performance using LiveView. And then afterwards, they were able to review the footage with the students to critique and otherwise kind of help them with any mistakes they may have made, or just basically go through and analyze everything together. It's not the most common use case, I'll admit, but it's a really cool one, and it shows the many uses of this software. Now, before I get going, I really want to give you a head start on how you can find the right device for your needs. As mentioned at the beginning, Synology has tons of different hardware options, and it can feel a little overwhelming. All of our NAS devices can be utilized as surveillance devices, and we also have a line of NVRs as well, which come with a few extra bells and whistles such as point-of-sale integration. Our DVA NVR has a dedicated graphics card that allows for deeper video analytics, such as crowd counting and off-limits area recognition. Now, here's a handful of kind of popular units that we see deployed a lot. The NVR 1218 can host up to 12 cameras, and it's perfect for kind of those smaller shop deployments, similar to that retail chain I was telling you about. The RS820 Plus can host up to 40 cameras, and with its small 1U 4-bay design, it can fit pretty simply in most racks. Now, the SA3400 can host up to 100 cameras, and this is basically to minimize the amount of hardware needed for these larger deployments. All of these can be controlled together and managed through CMS. So if each site in a single deployment has totally different needs, the units can be tailored specifically to fit that local use case. To make this all a bit easier, we've constructed an NVR selector on our website. Now simply input all of your known criteria, such as how many cameras you have, how long you need to store the data, and any information about your resolution, frames per second, etc. And we'll recommend you a list of all of the capable units. We work with over 7,400 camera models, as well as any ONVIF compatible camera. So you have tons of options for manufacturers and types of cameras to choose from. We also have vast I/O module support, from door controllers to speakers, lights, smoke detectors, and we can work with your point of sale systems as well. This allows you to pair your transactions with specific cameras, showing in real time the written exchange of that transaction on top of the footage, which is really cool functionality. Now, if you haven't worked with us before, but you're interested, please consider partnering with us. Partnering is free. It allows you access to 45-day trial licenses and loaner units for proof of concept testing with yourself or your clients who may not have utilized Synology before. It also gives you access to personalized training on anything that you may want to learn about Synology, whether it's surveillance, virtualization, or file server functionality, and partner exclusive deals and project consultation, which is really the largest part of my job here. So please feel free to reach out, contact my team and I. We'll leave contact links here in the chat, and we're all looking forward to speaking with you. I'll be answering a few questions, but before I jump into the questions, don't forget to take the survey following this event. If you do, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a DS220J unit for yourself, and you can get started utilizing Synology.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, everybody, it's about that time. If you have questions for Chris, you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A portion of your control panel. If you're watching on Facebook Live, comment those questions and we'll get them over to Chris. I have our first one here. When considering using a Synology or Synology for surveillance, are there particular cameras that I should also be considering?
For sure. So we do have kind of a compatibility chart on our website. Now that'll show you all of the cameras that we've tested, but a really great rule of thumb that makes this a lot easier is any ONVIF compatible camera or ONVIF will work with the Synology device. So that gives you a ton of different options out there. That most cameras I'm seeing are compatible with that. So again, pretty easy. And we have the compatibility chart on top of that.
Thanks, Chris. And I think you hit on this just a little while ago, but could you review again the incentives for becoming a partner with Synology?
For sure, for sure. So a huge part of my job is just to make, pitching Synology and working with Synology super easy. So whether that's providing consultation or jumping onto calls, providing demos for you or your clients, providing trainings for you and your team, or even things such as deal registration for eligible units, we can work with you to make sure that you're getting the correct units, the correct deployment, and the best pricing possible.
Okay, how does software licensing work? Do I pay extra for the operating system and surveillance station?
Cool. So this is a very common question. Now, what's great is all of our first-party software and our operating system is completely license-free. If you buy the unit, you have access to all of that. The only licenses that come into play are camera licenses. Now, every device, every main Synology NAS has 2 free licenses, and our NVRs have 4 free licenses. Beyond that, there are licensing costs for cameras, but what's great is this isn't like a subscription fee. There's no recurring costs. If you buy those camera licenses, you have them for the rest of your life. If that unit dies and you migrate to another unit, you can migrate those licenses with you. They'll be attached to your account and they'll always be functional.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to give everybody just a moment longer to type any additional questions that you might have. Chris, what does onboarding look like for a new client?
For sure. So please reach out to sac_sales@synology.com. And we also have a contact form on the website in case you missed that email address. But basically just reach out to us, say that you're interested, and we will give you a call. We'll write you an email. We'll get in touch with you right away to make sure, that we can get you on board. It's a really simple process on our end. We just, as soon as you're interested, we'll make it happen.
All right, everyone, I think that's all we have. So if there's no further questions, Chris, Synology, I want to thank you very much for the information today. I think it was very helpful. Remember, you'll receive a recording of today's webinar tomorrow in your email with a link to the video. And don't forget to take the survey. I know the Synology folks will be reaching out post-webinar. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.